Bill Holstein had a follow-up question to my earlier question, which is, I was sort of asking you about impact and the international community and, who's complicit. And Bill's asking if there's anything Biden could do apart from sending in the Marines. And I'm also curious about the role of the Catholic Church, because I saw in your articles about hunger and malnutrition that the Catholic Church was donating food, but that's not much of a, I mean, it's important, but that's obviously not going to bring about the systemic and structural change that's needed there.
Whoa, okay, yeah, a lot there. What can Biden do? I think it's a tough position for Biden because on the one hand, I think it's pretty clear that the sanctions did not have the short-term impact that the Trump administration hoped they would, and in the sense that they would lead to a change of government. But at the same time, I think Biden is under a huge amount of pressure after results in Florida not to look like he's soft on this particular set of people. So what would he actually do? I mean, I'm not sure. It does feel like a stalemate in a lot of ways, and maybe the same question was being asked about Syria 6 or 7 years ago, and people just don't really talk about Syria anymore. It kind of falls into the background. I feel a little bit like Venezuela. The same thing could happen. Sending in the Marines, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it'll happen. I also don't think it would help. As for the Catholic Church, yes, there's a group called Caritas, which is very important in the basic humanitarian on the ground work and a lot of the hunger related work. They're not the only ones. But the Catholic Church as an institution does have some sort of history of conflict with the government, and it has its own politics. I would say churches in general are institutions that are very important in supporting communities, and countries like this, very, very Catholic country, that continues to be important. But it is the humanitarian aid situation is still very complicated. I don't know your thoughts, Angus, on.
Actually, I haven't really done that much reporting on the Catholic Church's role. So yeah.
Or on any of that.
No. I'll trust you. I'll trust your opinions on the Biden administration.
Well, I'd love to hear a bit of thank you for that. And obviously it's immensely complicated. If it were easy, it would have been solved years ago, right? This is huge mess. Brian, you're still there, and I would love to know, could you bring us up to date, sort of what's happened since your last, those stories that we read in 2019? What happened with COVID? Have more people been able to leave? Obviously the countries nearby that people have fled to. I remember one of your stories talked about 4 million people had left. I'm sure it's more by now. They're all having to deal with COVID as well, which has been a huge problem in Latin America. What's happened since in Venezuela and to the migrants?
So 2019 was a year when there was a surge and kind of this euphoric groundswell the first sort of 6 months of the year, and this belief that that the government was going to change. That didn't happen. That meant that there's a lot of energy lost in the street, and there was a lot of interest internationally. People got tired of the story. One Washington Post columnist described it as I think the phrase was a junkie story is always too long. Is that this was this kind of cycles of bad decisions and people not being able to take advantage of the moment. And you could just see the traffic on internet sites had to do with Venezuela just dove off a cliff. So all of those things conspired to then, people did not have quite the same level of mobilization. The result of COVID was that a lot of people who were, particularly in Colombia, which is where the biggest portion of the diaspora lives, the kinds of jobs they were doing were a lot of street-related work and selling stuff on the street, that kind of thing. The whole thing just dried up because they went into lockdown, and a lot of people came back. That started to maybe 100,000 or so. That started to turn around the other way about 2 or so months ago because things weren't changing in Venezuela and things were starting to open back up in Colombia again. The the COVID situation here, it's really hard to know what's going on. The information is very tightly controlled, and the testing is constrained. So you don't know how many tests there are. I mean, it's a bit the same problem that happens everywhere, is you don't know exactly what the numbers are with respect to what the actual incidence of, it definitely is, sometimes comes across as almost convenient, as the government doesn't have gasoline anymore, doesn't have these things to do, so let's just shut the whole thing down. A lot of it was really shut down anyway. So it has, if you ask me how people are getting by, the honest truth is I don't know. It's exceptionally difficult. I mean, an average public servant is going to make $2-3 a month, and that's not going to buy you maybe buy you a carton of eggs, something like that. Maybe a day's worth of groceries would be a lot for that. So people are doing other things, and one of the things you're seeing is you go into a barrio, and everywhere, every street corner, somebody's selling something. And that's, I mean, it's, people are moving and they're reinventing themselves, but at the same time, I genuinely don't know how people do it.
We have a question from the audience about sort of foreign currency. How are they getting their foreign currency? And Angus, I don't know if you feel like this is more one for you, because there's a comparison here with North Korea's Room 39.
I haven't heard of North Korea's 39.
Sorry?
I haven't. Is North Korea's Room 39 infamous? I haven't heard of it.
So I had neither had I, and I checked that good old Wikipedia, which said it's a secretive North Korean party organization that seeks ways to maintain the foreign currency slush fund for the country's leaders. I'm guessing the way that they get foreign currency in Venezuela is all those oil exports, but I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to answer this question.
I mean, at the moment, I'm not sure there would be a single kind of government slush fund. I don't think they're really organized enough for that. But obviously, I think an easy way to kind of look at kind of the structure of Venezuela is almost like, just competing kind of fiefdoms, and each politician has his own kind of structure around him. In which they'll have various ways of obtaining hard currency, because obviously they don't. I mean, they earning bolivares is not a priority. So I think I think for every official that could be a little bit different. Maybe it's drug trafficking or kind of illegal or exporting gold mined in the jungle, or it's fleecing kind of oil or it's fleecing oil tankers that come to fill up in the ports. Even I think there's Bitcoin mining operations. I think they get incredibly creative at the ways of obtaining hard currency.